Hey, what's going on, brew tubers? I got something very special for you guys today. Fermentation Nation here, aka Jared, and we are going to brew up my buddy Steve James Barr's Black IPA recipe. I've been promising Steve I would brew a beer of his for a while, so we kind of do some pen pal brewing. He's going to brew a recipe of mine, and hopefully he'll put that out on YouTube as well. I'm going to flash up the recipe for you guys right now. It's a solid looking recipe. It's got lots of bitterness, lots of flavor going on. Looks like a good solid malt body, and it's gonna be a bigger beer. So we're gonna do this beer all grain today. I'm gonna show you guys my basic all grain brewing method that I use. It's just batch sparging, simple coolers, pots, stuff like that. Nothing funny. I do use temp control fermentation. You guys will see that a little bit later. And this is what I would call the first of 4 videos. So this is going to be an introduction to seeing the bit of brewing equipment that I use to brew, and we'll actually brew the beer. After that, we'll go into racking and dry hopping and how I do that. Then we'll go into crash cooling. You guys will see how I get the yeast out of the beer. You'll get times and temperatures, stuff like that, how I do it. And finally we go into packaging and tasting. You guys can see how I keg. And after the period of fermentation, secondary and dry hopping is all done, I actually just put it right in the keg, 30 psi, snap it on, carb it, and I'm drinking it right away. There's no waiting several days with cranked up psi's and pressures and all kinds of crazy stuff. I don't do that. So for those of you who haven't seen any of the videos that I've been putting out for years, they used to be called Heavy Riff Beer on YouTube. Sorry about that, I couldn't remember. And we did that before we opened the brewery. I'm the co-founder and head brewer of Heavy Riff Brewing Company here in St. Louis, Missouri. I started professionally brewing about late 2008, early 2009. Kept with it ever since, brewed at several different places before opening my own. It's been a really good, really fun run, and I'd like to get back into doing some more fermentation stuff with home brewers and home cider making, wine making, things like that, pass on the knowledge that other home brewers were kind enough to pass on to me before I took the next step. So you guys are along for the ride. I hope that you guys will get something out of the videos. And to Steve James Barr, my brother from another mother who lives down under, I can't wait to brew this beer up and try it. So let's get to it. Alright guys, on top of my buddy Scott's kegerator, I brew at my buddy Scott's house. He's nice enough to let me use his space. I've got 15 pounds of 2-row. We're actually only going to need about 13¼ pounds of that. I've got the specialty malts you guys saw in the recipe. I've got the Amarillo and Citra hops down here. I forgot to take the Cascade hops out of the freezer, so they're still upstairs, but I'll get those before we need them. And we're going to use 2 packs of SO5. We're going to rehydrate that like you would normally do any other brew day. We're going to use batch sparge method and a basic beverage cooler with false bottom. You guys will see all the equipment here in a minute, but wanted to show you guys exactly what it looks like. I have not ground the grain yet. I just picked it up from the homebrew shop today, so I'm really happy and excited about the recipe. Let's get to it. Here's a look at my equipment, guys, for my all grain home brewing. At one point in time, I had a Brutus 10 system I built from scratch. I also had a Blickman top tier and a lot of other things in between, but I actually went back to this. It's easy to keep clean. The parts really don't go bad. There's nothing to wear out on them. I can see how dirty or clean everything is, and I really like that aspect. So I like to keep it simple. We do have a Blickman floor burner with leg extensions and a propane tank. And this is about a 9-gallon pot that I got from a Chinese restaurant supply store. I've fitted a kettle valve, weldless, and a weldless Blickman Brumometer. There's no sort of filtration on the inside. Just stainless steel pot. We've got oven mitts for moving around hot stuff. We have our mash tun. On the inside of the mash tun is just a standard braid like you would see in a lot of other people's setups. It's not a full false bottom, just a regular stainless braid. And ball valve on that. I've got a pitcher, and it's got some marks on the inside of it. You might be able to see that, and that's a 1-gallon pitcher. I have a mash paddle. Had that for years. Got it from northernbrewer.com when I first started brewing. I've got a lighter. I've got a stainless steel spoon. I've got a bottle that is currently filled with Star San for sanitizing. I have what I consider to be the most important thing in my brewery setup, and that is a traceable lab grade thermometer. No junk from a homebrew store can ever replace a quality thermometer. You guys will be so much happier to be able to dial in all of your other gauges and things like that. Like on my pot, I've got that thermometer. And if you want to, you can actually send this back to the company. They'll recalibrate it and then guarantee it again after, I think it's 2 years. So it's a really good purchase. It's around 40 bucks. It's worth it. I have a hydrometer. I've got a jar that has a foam stopper in it. I'll put some water in that and put it in the microwave for about 4 minutes and boil it. It'll stay in the microwave all through the brew day, and when we're ready to rehydrate, I'll pull it out of there. It'll be right at room temperature or so. Dump in the yeast packets, put the foam back on top while we're cooling down, and by the time we're done cooling down the beer, it'll be ready to go. I've got an immersion chiller. Got this from Midwest Supplies in, like, I don't know, 2006, 2007. Had it a long time, works good. And I just use a simple bucket and your standard 3-piece airlock for fermentation. In the back hiding there, you've got some 5.2 pH buffer. I use just I don't know, about half a tablespoon in my mash. And then I've got Fermade K as my yeast nutrient. Use whatever yeast nutrient you can get a hold of that your homebrew shop recommends. I just happen to like Fermade K. I know it's typically used more for wine and mead and stuff like that, but for me it works well in beer fermentations as well, and it's a little bit less expensive than the Saccharomyces pills that you buy from like White Labs or Weist. So that's my basic brewing setup. And oh, for water, down there you've got a standard GE water filter you can get from your local hardware store. It has a carbon filter in it, and then I've got a white potable water RV hose that will hook up to the spigot, so I've got water outside. And the water here in St. Louis is pretty good. It's neither hard nor soft, and it works really well for most beer styles. The only thing I have to change it is if I do like a cream ale or a Helles, something like that, I'll soften the water with a little bit of distilled water you just buy from the store. But that's pretty much it, guys. This is a real basic setup, and I apologize for the mess in the back, but my buddy does a lot of amateur carpentry, and you know what? He lets me brew here for free, and that's awesome of him. So we're gonna get started with the grain bill. You can see the grain mill in the background there, and next thing you guys will see will be me milling up some grain. So here we are, guys. I've got 13.4 pounds of American 2-row malt, and I've got the specialty grains according to the recipe. Here's a grain mill. It's just an old Schmidling malt mill. This is Scott's mill. I've got a different one, but that's what he has in the table he built for it. Trash can to collect the grain. And this is actually the old extract pot he used to use when he first started brewing, so still finds some use and scale. Nothing fancy again, just uses a drill. And I apologize for the camera work. I'm flying completely solo today, so if it's a little shaky or annoying, I do apologize. So let me see if I can get this thing set up here and you guys can see me mill. Yay. All right, we're here. Well, you won't be able to see a whole lot, but it'll get loud for a minute. I won't keep the camera on the entire time that I'm milling, but you'll get the general idea. Hose, RV hose, no green hose. Follow the hose into the water filter and out of the water filter. I need about 4 3/4 gallons of mash in water. I use about 1.3 quarts per pound of grain. It's always served me well. And as soon as I get this collected, I'll get it heated up, and we'll be ready to mash in no time. Alright guys, I got the filtered water into my boil kettle, and I've got the grain all crushed, and I've got my mash tun. Flip this over for you guys real quick. It's got lots of beer stone on the inside. It's been used, that's for sure. But just a simple braid in the bottom, and it works great for me. I average 79 to about 81% efficiency on most beers. It'll be a little lower on this one because it's a bigger gravity beer, larger gravity beer. And for some reason this ton, once you get over about 1065 in gravity, starts to lose a few points, but that's okay. Here's crushed grain. All right, let's get this in the mash tun and get that boil kettle fired up. Hopefully this one's got fluid in it. It does. Hold on a second. There we go. The thing I like about this Blickman burner is it's nice and quiet. It also uses far less propane than a lot of other propane burners do, so it's pretty solid. Well, now we wait to mash in, so I'll get back with you guys in a few minutes. Okay guys, we're just about to mash in. Steve's recipe calls for a mash temperature in the mid 150 range, so I'm going to get my strike water to 168. That should settle around 153 or so. And even if it's 152 to 154, I'm not worried about it. It'll turn out great. Just got my thermometer ready. Get my mash pedal ready. And I'm also going to need my pitcher because I'm going to scoop the first bit of water in before it's light enough for me just to dump. Let's check the temp on the mash water. Or strike water. We're perfect, 168. Let's get rid of the lid. Let's start mashing this puppy in. Color of this beer is about 30 SRM, nice and dark, but it uses Carafa 3, which is dehusked, the special Carafa. So it should give us that dark color without adding so much of the roasty character that you get in stouts and porters and even some brown ales. Water's in. Give it a stir and add some 5.2 buffer. It's a blend of salts for equalizing your mash at about 5.2, which is about ideal. I really don't use that, not the big rock there. I really don't use that much of it, guys. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's not very much. And stir it up. Make sure you don't have any dough balls. If you got dough balls, water can't interact with the grain, and the starches will not convert to sugar, and you'll get a much lower efficiency. Avoid that by raising your strike temperature a degree or two and really stirring it down if you're having troubles with that. Give you plenty of time to make sure the dough balls are gone, and as you're losing a little bit of steam and heat, it'll actually equalize to your correct temperature for mashing. This is just a simple single infusion mash. Later on I will show you guys how I do decoction mashing. It is possible to do decoction mashing in a simple water cooler type mash tun. Really not a big deal at all. Right, it feels pretty good. Try and get a temperature here. Keep climbing. If you're still a little warm as well, you can always stir it down.
Because those real lights stayed on the whole way. Wondered if they weren't left on. Oh, yeah.
I wish I had a second camera right now because I'm at 153.3. Matter of fact, I'll grab it real quick. You guys can see. Climb back up. A little higher in this spot, it's okay. 153.8, about 154, 153. It'll lose a degree to the lid, as the lid of this mash tun is Gonna absorb a little bit of heat. Put the lid on there, set our timers for an hour. See you guys in a bit. Alright, we're about halfway through our mash, and right now I have 5 gallons of sparge water heating up inside of the boil kettle. Filtered just the same way we did our other water, no additions, anything like that. And I wanted to talk to you guys a bit about how I batch sparge. So, as most of you may or may not know, I think most of you do, there's 2 main ways of sparging. You have fly sparge and batch sparge. Fly sparge is where I'd have like a second cooler like this, it'd be full of hot water, and I would trickle hot water on top of the grain bed with about an inch or 2 of water sitting above it, and it would slowly drain down, rinsing the grains out through the ball valve and then into a kettle. Instead, I like to batch sparge. It's a little faster, and I think it does almost as good of a job. If you get 85% efficiency doing fly sparging, you should get 80 to 81 doing batch sparging. But where people have problems with batch sparging is how much water they actually put back into their mash when they do their sparge. So I know that we're going to have a 5.5 gallon end of boil. That's what we want to hit our total amount, total volume. So I know that my system's going to boil off about 1 gallon. So I need 6.5 gallons to start with so that I can equal the 5.5 at the very end. So right now I've got about 4 3/4 gallons in here. You're going to get some absorption into the grains that just won't come out. Liquid that will not come out. But I know I should get around 2 gallons, maybe 2.5 gallons out of this mash, out of the initial mash. So I have 5 gallons in there. I'm not going to put all 5 gallons into this mash tun. What's going to happen is once I drain out, I'll measure the amount of liquid I collected, and then because the grains are already wet, they will not absorb any more liquid. So I'll only put the exact amount of water for the sparge into this mash tun that I need to equal my total pre-boil volume. So if I need 6.5 gallons, I get 2.5 gallons out of here. I'm only going to put 4 of the 5 gallons back into this mash tun, stir it, let it sit for 15-20 minutes, and then drain it all out. If I add that other that last gallon in there, it'll dilute the sugars. And by diluting the sugars, now I have less sugar going into the liquid that I'm going to boil, and I have too much liquid left in the mash tun. So my opinion is to try it that way and see if you get a little bit better efficiency if you're a batch sparge and not really kind of hitting the gravities that you're looking forward to or trying to hit, and see if that helps out. And I'll show you guys a little more in detail about that. In about a half hour, I'm going to put the tube on here that I have. This is just a silicone high temp piece of tubing, and we'll do a Vorlauf. Vorlauf is just a recirculation to set the grain bed, and by setting the grain bed, it'll keep large particles of grain from getting through the screen and into the boil kettle itself, help to clarify the wort a little bit before we boil. You guys will see that real soon, so let's get to it. Okay guys, we're ready to sparge. It's been an hour, and we're going to do our Vorlauf real quick. So let me pop the top off, mash tun. Got my high temp silicone tubing right into the pitcher. Crack the ball valve a little more than halfway. Start flowing. Some bubbles. There we go. Right, I'm going to fill this pitcher about halfway, and at that point it should be running nice and clear. Nice and dark already. I'm looking forward to this, Steve. I think it's going to be a great beer. You can Vorlauf several times if you need to, until the big particles stop coming out. That's all you're worried about. You're not worried about getting it like drinkable, finished beer clear. It's running really clear now, so put that in the bucket and recycle this on back on the top of the grain bed in the mash tun. And once this is done collecting, we'll go ahead and start sparge. We'll figure out how much we got out of this mash and top the rest up with enough water to meet our boil volume. Here's our collection. Alright, initial collection is over, and we got right about 2.5 gallons. Kind of hard for you guys to see, I know. Might be easier that way, actually. So I need 6.5 to boil down to 5.5. So we have 5 gallons of sparge water in here, and that's sitting at about 190 degrees or so. And I'm gonna put 4 gallons of it in there. And with the other gallon, I'm gonna rinse it out through the ball valve and make sure that everything's nice and sanitary and good and cleaned out of that ball valve. So let's do that now.